Welcome to the Grace Shaw channel. And today we're going to be talking about total utility and marginal utility. You ask, what does utility mean? It is the ability for something like a product to satisfy a consumer's needs or wants. So what does that mean? Utility is actually our happiness. How much did we receive of happiness from consuming or using a product? So it's happiness units. So let's take a look at total utility. Total utility is the sum of satisfaction that a person can receive from the consumption or use of all units of a specific product or service. So if you add up all of the marginal utility, you get total utility. So what is marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional utility gained from the consumption of one additional unit of a good or service. It estimates the quantity of a good that a consumer wants to purchase. It is calculated by the change in total utility divided by the change in the units. And we will look at this a little further in our video of how to do those calculations. One law about marginal utility is as more of the good is consumed and total utility rises, positive marginal utility occurs. So this can also be said the other way. The more of the good that is consumed and total utility decreases, negative marginal utility occurs. That is like saying that you get really good utility, high points for the first candy bar that you consume. You're so happy with eating that first one. But by about the fifth one, maybe it's like, oh, it's just another candy bar. So your happiness units go down. So that is what it's saying. There is a breaking point to utility, marginal utility, where it will decrease instead of increasing. So let's take a look at total utility first. So as you can see in this table, you notice that the quantity of wings is inversely related to the quantity of soda being consumed. The total utility increases and then it decreases. So with the which one do you think that would be preferred by looking at these numbers? Remember, total utility is the amount of happiness that you have. So you should have came up with bundle B, because bundle B has the highest total utility or happiness of all these bundles that are on the screen in this chart. The next one would be C, then D, then of course A with 18, because it is has the least amount of happiness with 3 wings and 3 bottles of soda. Next, we will be calculating marginal utility. Take a moment to look at this chart that we are going to be working with to calculate our first marginal utility. As you can see, the wings increase numerically by 1, and our utility goes steadily, our total utility goes steadily up. It increases with the number of wings. So the first thing that you're going to do when you do any calculations is you're going to find your formula. Your formula for marginal utility, as we discussed in our intro, is the change in total utility divided by the change in units. So the units in this case would be the number of wings consumed. So these are just two different ways to write the same formula. Next, let's take a look on how to actually figure these out. So let's just do the first two, totally together. So we want to, on the top of our division, we want to figure out our change in total utility. So that in the first one, this is going to be easy. We have nothing to compare it to because we didn't consume 0 wings, because utility then would be 0. So we have nothing to compare it to. So what I like to do is just put a couple dashes or a line in there so I know that there is nothing to calculate there. So then we move on to 2 wings consumed with a total utility of 15. So we've increased by 1 wing and 10 units of total utility. So how do you figure that out? Mathematically, it was the change in total utility, which would be 15 for the 2 wings minus 5 from the previous wing that you ate, and that is divided by the change in the units, which is 2 wings minus 1 wing, and that is going to give you, 10 for your answer for marginal utility. So let's just do one more together. As you can see, we're going to take the change in total utility, which can be figured out by 35 minus 15, and that is going to be divided by the change in the number of wings consumed, which is 3 minus 2, and that gives us 20 for an answer. So why don't you hit pause on your video and figure out the next 3 and come back and we will show you the answers. Here are your answers for the rest of this chart. As you can see, 3 wings would be our most preferred because we get the highest number of marginal utility of 20 out of these. And as you can see, then we decrease once again. And this is a good example of the law of diminishing marginal utility, which states that marginal utility decreases as more of the good is consumed over a given time. And this is a really good example. We go from 10, 20, which is a significant increase, then we start dropping off by 5 happiness units or marginal utilities calculated points as we consume more. So let's take a look at one more marginal utility calculation. In this one, as you can see, the number of wings is not rising by just 1. We have different values as we consume, and our total utility is at various numbers, but they go up as we go. So remember that the first one, what do? Nothing, because we have 0 to compare it to. So then, the first thing from there we're going to do is figure out what our formula is. And of course, it's the same formula that we were working with in the prior example. So let's start calculating here. So for the second one, again, it is the change in total utility, which is, in this case, 58 minus 30, and it's divided by the change in the total number of wings consumed. And that gives us 28 for a number for marginal units. And this is the same as the previous problem. But all of you might have gotten used to just one difference in the wing. So thinking that total utility is just the marginal utility is just the calculation of total utility. So let's see if you can figure out the next four. So go ahead and pause the video and we will come back and discuss these answers. Here are your answers for the rest of the calculations of this example. As you can see, your marginal units steadily decline. If you didn't get these numbers, please check your numbers that you use and making sure that you're using the correct numbers in the change in units, which is actually the number of wings consumed. So these steadily decline, and if you wrote these on a graph, you would see that it would be down sloping. And this is another good example of the law of diminishing marginal utility. It decreases as more of the good is consumed over a given time. So I hope this has given you some good examples of marginal and total utilities. If you have any questions, just hit me up and I will be glad to answer your questions. Again, thank you for watching Grace Shop Channel.